Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of all races, colors, and creeds, welcome to the greatest show on earth. I'm Greg Anthony. This is the Investigative Journal, and no matter who you are, whether you have the coronavirus, whether you're a Jesuit infiltrator, whether you're just an average person like me, just strap on your seatbelt. We got quite a show for you today. And in the second half hour, I'm going to tell you, just so you listen to the second half hour, because a lot of times people just, they come to the show, they hear your voice for 3 seconds, they go, I ain't going to listen to this idiot. So you don't know all those hits that you get on your YouTubes, how long they actually stay, right? In fact, I was looking at YouTubes today, and I found that one of the best YouTubes that I wanted to read, and it was about the Protestant Reformation, had 62 views, and it was put up about 6 months ago. Then I tried to say, well, what's the most, and there's nothing wrong with a puppy and a baby, but I also checked out today the most watched video that I could find, and this took me like 10 minutes, and it was 85 million views. And it was a 2-minute video about a puppy falling to sleep on a baby. I really like puppies and babies, but I think those 85 million views should go to the Protestant Reformation so you understand these dastardly Jesuits. And people try to say, well, Greg, the reason you don't like the Jesuits is because you went to Notre Dame High School and they were Holy Cross fathers, and your crosstown rivals were the Loyola boys from the Jesuit school. And, I didn't like them back then, but for different reasons. They always thought they were smarter than us, We were like the street guys. They were like the prim and proper guys that, wear the ties to the sock hops. Remember sock hops? Do they have those anymore? That's how I learned that I was really frightened of women when I was young. I was so nervous to, what happens at a Catholic school is you go to school with boys all day, right? And then after a football game, you have what's called a sock hop. That means you take off your shoes and you go to the basketball floor, and there's a band up on the stage. The girls are on one side from all the Catholic schools, and then you got to go over and walk and pick one out to dance with. Oh, man, that was terrible. I usually ended up going in the back and having a beer outside. But anyway, so if you haven't heard of a sock hop, those things are over. I guess they don't do those anymore. But anyway, that's because everybody's on the internet all the time, frying their brains, especially with this 5G system coming out, man. That is going to be dangerous. And we're kind of diverting here from. I want to talk a little bit about my trek towards understanding the Jesuit order, the Vatican-led New World Order, how they infiltrate different societies, and throughout the ages have caused nothing but havoc around the world. And I want to do that. But in the second half hour, I have a great interview. It won't be a long interview. The guy's only given me like 5 minutes of his time, but it may go longer. And his name is Nathan Alexander Flanagan. And he comes from a long Irish family of seafarers and captains of wayfaring ships. And Nathan is going to tell us about his journey on this flat earth all the way around it in a circumference, all the way. It took him 3 years and 6 months. And he has documented all the ice walls and how there is an ice wall covering, surrounding us in all directions. And he's going to tell us about this journey. And it was one way that I could debunk people who say that the earth is round. They always call me and they say, oh, Greg, you're crazy. The earth isn't flat. Well, I've got Nathan Alexander Flanagan on in the second half hour, and he's going to tell you his journey. So that'll give you positive proof that the earth is flat and not circumference, not a round ball floating around, at 60 million miles an hour. But anyway, this journey to understand the Vatican and the Jesuits has been a long one for me. And it's taken me through many, many different twists and turns in my life. But at this late date, I've been doing this now for maybe 25 years, and at this late date, I found it to be quite rewarding. In the beginning, there were very few people that got the drift of what we were talking about, but I'm glad to say over the years that it hasn't been picked up on the mainstream, but there are a whole hell of a lot of people that really have decided to check out this Luciferian organization and who they really are. And it's really pleasing from that point of view. And every now and then I'll get an email from someone who's listened for 10 years and say, Greg, thanks a lot. I first started researching when I listened to your show years ago. And it's quite rewarding. Now, have we made any progress? I think yes. I think we have, because the more people that understand it, the more people will really be able to lead a healthier life in this country. Because to be hoodwinked, to be lied to, and not known is, I think, the most ridiculous. It's insulting. And when you realize it, you at least got some, what I call artillery to fight back. And throughout the years, I found that some of the best information I got didn't come from me, but came from my listeners. And they're incredible. And they've given me so much information that I really shouldn't take credit for any of this stuff. I just pass it on. People like to listen, and that's it. And in the old days, I did a lot of digging when I was a journalist in Rome, and I really uncovered a lot of things just because I was there. You know what the saying is, just get up in the morning and be there, and you'll never know what you'll accomplish. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot just by being there for 7 years, and it led me on a journey to really, really question everything that comes out of the mouth of our leaders and the people that are on the pulpits in both Protestant and Catholic churches in America. And this infiltration that the Jesuits have accomplished is amazing. And I want to go to some of my listeners today in this first half hour and get and read some of their comments, because actually they're better than what I do. And I really appreciate if you comment on your journey to understanding what we talk about here. And I very simply say it's the Vatican-led New World Order that is looking to create a one-world government and one-world religion. Now, that's going to be called a conspiracy theory on Fox and on CNN, etc., and even in many, many stations on the Internet, the alternative, because they just, they stop at things like the Bilderbergers, and I'll get to that in a minute, and other things that are put out there. And this is the way they have to operate in secret. And so I did a show the other day because it's really interesting. I find that you see this rush towards socialism in America, and the mainstream is covering it daily, and you hear it day and night about the new congresswomen who came and men that came in that are pushing this progressive socialist Democrat agenda to the mainstream. And then you're hearing Bernie Sanders, of course, Elizabeth Warren, and others pushing a strict socialist communist agenda. So I started doing a show and telling people you have to look back to the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries and the Jesuit Paraguay reductions, where they came up with this new form of government that spread with their help throughout the world to cause havoc, deaths, millions and millions of people killed, starving, famine. Look what's going on in Venezuela. And we have, guess who's the Jesuit general now? He's the Venezuelan, right? So, anyway, I did something, the other day, and I said, there's a history of socialism now, a special being done on Fox, and they failed to really get into the Jesuits. And I go, and they never do. I mean, if you just listened, Ash Wednesday was last week, right? And all these people got on there with their ashes on their forehead. And do they really know that this is a Luciferian organization, or are they just, do they know it and covering, or are they really just, stupid? A lot of times you'll listen to like Fox News, and there's a guy named Tucker Carlson who's actually rather entertaining, and I listen to him a lot because I like to hear these guys. There's nothing wrong with it, and he's always saying how stupid these other journalists are on the left wing. Well, I just want to ask: are they all stupid to not deal with this story, or do they think it's like Catholic bashing? Get over it. It's important. Your country's being turned into a disaster, but you are worried about offending a few Catholics. Don't worry. I was a former Catholic. You don't offend me. And what about all this pedophilia and all this stuff? You give them a free pass? Of course. You hear about it every now and then, but the depths of it are amazing when you read about it. And so I'm doing this show on socialism and saying you got to go back and look at the Jesuit reductions. And then one of my listeners sent me a rather interesting email and or comment also on the show, which I said is better than what I do, and I'll read it to you. He said, comes from somebody named Zip Freer. In the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, the Order of the Jesuits began a system of missionary work called the Reductions, in order to Catholicize native peoples in Spain, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, and America. These were the beginning of the communist and socialist ideas of human society that dominated the 20th century. The book you have to get, and I've commented on this book, The Footprints of the Jesuits by R.W. Thompson, written in 1894. And it's interesting when you look back, and I'm commenting here just so we don't get each other confused. But it's interesting when you go back to that time period, you read a lot about them. The truth about the Jesuits seems to have gotten forgotten. There was a lot of books written, a couple books written that I comment on the truth about the Jesuit Vatican role in the assassination of Lincoln, that everybody, and many, many other things, how the Catholic bishops were trying to overthrow the country in the Civil War. Then we have the Morris family, Samuel Morris, the inventor of the Morris Code, going to Rome, coming back, writing a book warning Americans that you're going to be taken over from within. He was a very intelligent guy. And I remember doing a show years ago about that. And I did that show, and I got contacted by one of the relatives, a long-lost relative, and she and her husband were running a small Christian ministry in regarding this, and she was telling me about the harassment that she was receiving, and she was a relative of the man who developed the Morris Code. So anyway, during that period of time, there was a lot more understanding in the mainstream. The newspapers, in fact, covered some of this stuff, but now it's kind of like, woo, nothing. Total control. They've taken over Facebook. The Jesuits are behind it. They're involved also in the Chinese CIA, whatever T something, I can't think of it. And the Jesuits have been in China since the 16th century. They're all over the damn place. And I always like to bring up this quote from a Jesuit general, Mr. Tamburini, years ago, said that we control everything, sitting from the seat at Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque in Rome. We control everything from China to the New World, everywhere, without anybody knowing it. And so, get back to my friend here. And he says that they were doing these reductions to Catholicize natives in Spain, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, and America. And these were the beginning of the communist and socialist ideas of human society that dominated the 20th century. And he said, the ideas the Jesuit developed in Paraguay over a period of 158 years were then communicated to Karl Marx in the 19th century. For 5 years, Marx went to the Jesuit school in Trier, which during the Prussian period was known as the Friedrich Wilhelm Gymnasium. Along with Karl Marx, other leading communists like Joseph Stalin, Fidel Castro, were also trained by the Jesuits. Why don't we throw in, this is me speaking, Bernie Sanders, right? Throwing good old Bernie being controlled by the Jesuits. And anyway, so this is an interesting, very interesting. So he says Castro were also trained by the Jesuits. In fact, the former Jesuit general Pedro Arrupe once boasted. What did he boast? Oh man, he's got it here, and I lost it. Let's see if I can find it. I know he's got it here. Once boasted. Oh, I don't have it. But I guess he did boast that the Jesuits basically trained a number of people. But anyway, let's see. Let's see if there's no reply. Okay. So anyway, that's just one comment from this one of my listeners. And like I said, they're a lot better than what I do. And so please, don't be afraid to let me know what your thinking is on this stuff. And let's read another one here. Oh, this is another. Who wrote this? Anonymous. Okay. Both artists. They're called starving artists for a reason. And the majority of farmers are poor. Getting rid of the amassed property of the rich will make everyone poor. Socialism is a product of the Jesuits, is not just the idea of equality. It is the idea of making all people equally poor. He's right, because look at Venezuela. And, I know firsthand because I talk to people. I have friends in Mexico who have friends in Venezuela. And, man, I get emails, not from somebody in Venezuela, every day. Do you have food? No food today. They tell me about the money. I mean, it costs like $50 for a loaf of bread. And I'm hearing it firsthand from people that actually live there. So it's insane to go to a socialist system. But this is what the Jesuits want, because they perfected it. It's the idea of making all people equally poor, equally vulnerable through giving them limited resources, equally controllable through fear of the loss of what they have left to lose, and thus making all people slaves to the government and ultimately to the Roman Catholic Church, just as the nations were during the Dark Ages. For the Jesuits and the military of the Vatican, and their goal is to promote, I had to put the sneeze button on. I think I have the swine flu. Oh, no, wait, it's SARS. No. What else is there? The monkey flu? No, I don't have that one that they did. No, maybe it's this new coronavirus. Where's my check? Get me that kit. I just sneezed. But I covered my face, even though nobody's here. I did it the way they tell me. Isn't that great? I turned the TV on the other day just to break in here after I sneezed. And I'm looking for really great advice about this. I'm thinking my government officials are really up to date on this stuff, right? And I hear, wash your hands. Okay, mommy. Then make sure you don't sneeze in public. Just cover your sneeze and you'll be fine. What great advice. I mean, they go to school for 30 years to medical school. And that's all they can give me? Huh. Okay. For the Jesuits are, according to my listener here that sent me this, the military of the Vatican, and their goal is to promote and orchestrate the growth of papal authority, which can only thrive under dictatorships. Stalin, genocide in Russia. Now, one of the things that I did personally is research Stalin a lot. And man, you might as well call him Father Joseph Stalin. Then Mussolini, the genocide in Italy. Hitler, genocide through Europe. Pavlik, genocide in Croatia, a story that we've covered here in depth. We're all Jesuit educated and signed concordats with the Vatican. And remember, concordats, go to concordat.org. And you're going to read a lot, 200 of them they have with the world. Man, and you don't think they're the richest organization in the world? They're surrounded themselves with Jesuits. All these people, they do today, with the priests and the cardinals of Rome who flock to them in droves. These instances of religious genocide are referred to as ethnic cleansings. However, the targets in every case were Protestant Jews, Orthodox Christians, who had departed the Roman Catholic Church to form their own church with their own leadership, denying Rome's papal authority. This is the ultimate goal of the Jesuit-invented socialism at its core. Socialism creates a mindset of fear and dependence on the government, what opens the door to more and more laws, all beneficial to the Vatican's intended form of government, being created without resistance from the citizenship. And I have to add, yes, do some reading. You'll find their government of choice, the Vatican even tells you in their writings, is fascism. And then if you look on the House of Representatives, on the podium behind the House Speaker, there's two fasci, symbols that were used in Roman times. Exactly why in a republic, democracy like ours, would you ever have that? And they give you some cockamamie story. Oh, it was just given to us by a famous, blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. Then in the Senate, I think, they have Pope Innocent XIII, I think is the one over their head looking down, the biggest inquisitor in the history of the church, one of the biggest. Why is he there? Oh, enough is enough, isn't it? And, Trump did say one thing good. He said, I'm tired. Did you hear it? Lost in all this stuff. He says, I'm a builder. And he said, I'm not going to allow these government buildings to be built so terribly. They're just terrible. He wants really good-looking government buildings. And I'm saying, get rid of all these Roman things, Get rid of everything that tells us about Rome and their occult and the Vatican. How about Persephone on the top of the Capitol Rotunda? Lincoln did not come out when they put that thing up. Go check out what's on the top of the, Capitol building. Yeah. This goal, back to my listener here, this goal is reached by placing Jesuit-educated politicians in office who then spread Jesuit socialist propaganda via the cooperative media, which is owned by the Papal Knights of Malta and the Knights of St. Gregory. The spreading of socialist propaganda divides the people into factions, distracting and weakening the entire nation by turning the people against one another over Jesuit-invented causes. Now remember, when you talk about newspapers, Mike Royko, a famous Chicago journalist, he was a columnist who I really liked years ago. When Rupert Murdoch, the Knight of Malta, bought the Sun-Times, the newspaper he worked, he quit. And he said, no respectable fish would ever be wrapped up in a Rupert Murdoch paper. Mike, you were right. As fear grows and people begin to distrust one another, this is my listener, more and more they communicate less and less about issues which the Jesuit media has labeled controversial, and I will say conspiracy. Intended target groups are socially isolated and marginalized through propaganda, which blames the marginalized groups for the woes actually caused by the Jesuit social and economic agitation. The right-wing journalists have said one thing very good, but it applies to us. They said about the left wing that the Chuck Schumer and all the left wing, they accuse us of doing the things they're doing. Well, that's exactly what the Jesuits do to any story that'll implicate them. Their dependency and division allow government power to increase unabated as a dictatorship is formed. This is the point at which concordats are signed with the Vatican. The banning of guns is enacted. The religious genocide begins against the marginalized groups, primarily Jews, Protestants, Orthodox Christians, etc. I'll finish this up. I got another one at the break. We got to take a break. And, I forgot to do an ad. Boy, I tell you, I'll do it next half hour. I got to pay the bills, too. And I'll tell you what, we got our interview. I'm going to wait till he calls me, so maybe later in the hour, with, what's his name? Nathan Alexander Flanagan, who has traversed what he said is the flat earth in his ship. Went all the way around the ice wall. Took him 3 years and 6 months. He documents it, so if you don't think it's flat, forget about it. Nathan's going to tell you otherwise. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This ain't happening.
Okay, boys and girls, back to the greatest show on earth, people of all races, colors, and creeds. You are welcome. We're not racist here, even though we may not be politically correct. We're not racist on the Investigative Journal. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're a drug dealer. You can find your way. Don't worry about it. And you're going to make a lot of money in the meantime. Just get together with the CIA and the Vatican, and don't worry. Cut a deal. Cut a deal. The art of the deal, as Donald Trump says. You'll be fine. Look at all these people that have made. Greg Anthony here, by the way. Pablo Escobar made millions. So did El Chapo. He's in an American jail now. How long did they work with the CIA before they got him? And then somebody else comes along. They get tired of working with the same drug dealers. And in our series, we're going to get back to that. I've not got yet back to Mena, Arkansas, the Clintons, and their involvement, as well as other things in the drug industry here and the illegal drug market that is going on as we speak. Ever since Reagan said the war on drugs, it's gotten 10 times worse. But they made a lot of money on it. And if you're looking for a bank, you guys, if there's any drug dealers listening, go to the Vatican Bank. $1 million or more. They only take 15%. They do a great washing laundromat job. They do a great wash. They'll send it to another bank. You'll never get caught. Don't worry about it. Plus, you can get your confession free. Okay, I got to get back to some of these quotes about Jesuit socialism that there's these emails I get from my listeners, because it's really good, and I will in a minute. But first of all, I've got to pay some bills, and I've got two advertisers, two new ones. Well, one's an old one. It's the U.S. Army. And the second one is the WHO CDC. Oh, they're talking about the coronavirus. This will be interesting. But anyway, I've got to do this. And did you know, folks, that a recent poll done by millennials, done by over 650 millennials. 99% said they are in favor of a senior citizen army, meaning they don't have to go anymore. And so with that, the United States Army has gotten together with leading seniors across the country to push this idea. And the idea is mounting. Since we first advertised this on the Investigative Journal weeks ago, we now have either up to 50 people that have now enrolled. And you should listen to some of their comments. It's better than Social Security. You get 3 times as much. You don't have to do much to get in, just 1 push-up, 1 sit-up, run the mile in a day. And then they give you a free computer and training on a number of different things, how to fly a drone into a Muslim mosque, etc., etc. Wonderful war today. They say you don't need to run up Pork Chop Hill. You don't need to do anything like that because everything is robotized. We have a robot army, and you can control it right from your computer at Fort Bragg. So the U.S. Army wants you, if you're 55 years and older, to join the Senior Citizen Army. That was a paid message by the U.S. Army. Okay, thanks a lot. Well, I got to get to the CDC. They have listened to my show and were quite impressed yesterday by me making the correlation between maybe 5G has something to do with this fake Wuhan virus, and they don't think it's fake, so they want to run an ad to debunk that. And secondly, they were really interested and made a comment, how could you say that this was created to create hermaphrodites with our vaccine? So they're upset about that, so they want to set the record straight. So it's a 30-second ad, won't take long. Hi, we're the people from the CDC, the WHO, and we are working hard to come up with a vaccine for the coronavirus. And everyone in the world is going to take it. We estimate that we can have this done within 3 months, and we're looking for volunteers to be tested. So if you want to be tested, and we will promise that it will be a paid vacation to Hawaii for 6 weeks, and you will then be injected with literally hundreds of new vaccines. And if you can satisfy our levels of success, meaning if you don't come down with it and you feel good by the time you leave, we will pay you $1,000 for each shot we give you. Wow. But remember, this is a public service announcement by the CDC, and they're looking for guinea pigs to go to Hawaii to be tested and vaccinated. Okay? You know something? I think this whole, just an aside, this whole coronavirus, we've been through so many false flag biological problems, all these different ones, and they're all talking about the end times and the conspiracy theories, but let's get straight here. If you don't believe the government, which I don't believe anything they say, especially when you consider 9/11 and a number of other things that have been told to us, you can't believe them on this. So there's a lot of different ideas, but I really think this has to do with a huge vaccination program. And whatever's in those things isn't good, and we talked about that the other day. And so beware of that on a serious note. Okay, so we're back. I got a few more comments here, and I also am waiting for a call from Nathan Alexander Flanagan, who supposedly, he's got evidence that he went around with his ship, a huge 200-foot vessel. He's from a seafaring Irish family, and he really traversed the ice wall all the way around. All the way around. He confesses the world is not round. And Antarctica does not exist the way they tell us, and he documents it in his cruise. So that'll be interesting. I'm waiting for his call. But until he calls, we're back talking about socialism and the story and the show I did the other day, and I had a comment, and in this comment he said, currently the United States is in the throes of being completely Romanized. The evidence of this can be found in our court system. The Roman fasci, a symbol of Roman civil authority, is prominently, I just said that, displayed in our Congressional Hall. Our flag bears the color of the Vatican in the form of a gold fringe around its edges. And our laws are written in Latin, which is the Vatican's official language. Our people are divided by Jesuit Socialist propaganda. Certain subjects have been deemed controversial or conspiracy theories, causing our people to fear becoming marginalized and persecuted. In other words, excommunicated, as in the Dark Ages, by losing their jobs, homes, spouses, children, and even their church communities as a result of discussing them. College textbooks and social media agitators are blaming Jews and Protestants for our economic and social woes. The Vatican has been recognized as an independent nation state by two of our presidents, Reagan and Trump. Our presidents are chosen at the Alfred E. Smith Political Dinner, founded by the 1945 Cardinal Francis Spellman of New York, currently hosted by Cardinal Timothy Dolan, and held annually in October, particularly the year presidential elections are conducted. Both Trump and Hillary Clinton attended in 2016 and admitted to Jesuit affiliation during their dinner speeches. The 2-hour video is still available online. Generations of our presidents and politicians have been Jesuit-educated and or surrounded by a Jesuit-educated staff. Our Constitution and Bill of Rights have been vilified and all completely abandoned. This has enabled the introduction and enactment of gun legislation, which is constantly promoted and currently being tightened. In short, civil unrest, distrust amongst our Jesuit propagandized citizenship, loss of rights, the cover-up, and thus the loss of historical knowledge, combined with papal control over our government, has laid the foundation for the ultimate goal of religious genocide by the Vatican. Okay, that was a comment from one of my listeners. And I do have another one here. This was by Tony Mundaka. And this is a real long one, so I'm only going to give you a taste of it and maybe get back to it because it's really pretty good. And he sends this stating it's from the ResearchGate.net, and it's about the Jesuit reduction system that we talk about on this show, the formations of communism, okay, and socialism in Paraguay during the 16th and 17th century. And he says the Jesuit missionaries, and this is in the ResearchGate, who established a mission system in the Northwest in the 1840s, modeled the structure of that system on the reduction system concept, which had proven successful in Paraguay. Okay, and the reason I'm just going to read a little bit is because we have done a lot on this show, and a lot of the people that have come on in the past about the Jesuit mission schools and how they were genociding Native Americans and what was really going on there, torture, rape, death, pedophilia, what have you. And these kids were really stolen from their Native American families and forced with government cooperation into these schools. Horrendous neglect, horrendous using these kids as slaves as they were used in the Paraguay reductions. And this went on in Canada and in America. And I remember just in 2009, we were doing stories about a lawsuit filed by the Tamaki law firm in Washington State. And the lead investigator was a man by the name of Ken Bearchief, who I recently found out passed away, and Ken appeared on my show many times. And they basically were highlighting many of the survivors, the victims, with their stories, hundreds of them, of how they were abused at these Jesuit schools. And I remember having one girl on, who is now a woman, who witnessed a priest bury a young baby under a church. After they were older and they had enough courage to bring this up to the authorities, murder has no statute of limitations. Nothing was ever done. So I'm familiar with these stories, about the Jesuit mission schools, both here in Canada. And also, there was a $200 million payout to the Tamaki law firm in 2009, the largest one against the Jesuit order for these abuses in the history of our country. So this is not conspiracy theory. Where is the mainstream news when you need them? But anyway, these systems of reductions or self-sufficient isolated native communities under church control was proposed for the new wave of missionary activity after the reestablishment of the order in the 1800s. The full development of this system, however, failed in the Northwest due to many differences in natural and social environment from the original successful venture in South America. There's much more to this, and I'll get to this article a little later, but it's very, very long. And I do have one here, and this is interesting. I'm waiting for this call from Nathan, and he's not called yet. Hopefully I'll have time. If not, I'll have him on tomorrow for sure. So listen tomorrow if he doesn't call. He was supposed to call me. He's probably on his ship somewhere, and he's not getting. He said he's back. He's not getting he's not getting any cell phone power or something. But anyway, I wanted to read this because I found somebody, and I always look for people that have been researching this subject. And this is an interesting article on a website called Ex-Catholics for Christ. And the man who writes this has been researching this for a long time. And I thought I'd read to you, since we're going into some of the people who also really understand the Jesuit order. Wow. Okay. Let me start here, because he's been doing this a long time. He said over 20 years ago, okay, and I can't give you his name because he doesn't give it here, but I gave you the website. Over 20 years ago, when I first began researching this shadowy organization and its then purpose and pedigree in the political arena, you know, every time, let me just break in here. Every time I read something like this, I'm imagining myself 25 years ago in Rome and thinking about this, and I'm imagining myself having this really good glass of white wine, nice piece of cheese, talking Italian, enjoying life, but then saying, I got to go and get into the Vatican catacombs. I got to get into the Vatican archives. And what a story. I mean, it was fun. I mean, trying to figure this out. And, man, I'm just thinking back to some of the stories, and please excuse me, but I can't help myself. But he says, over 20 years ago, I began researching this shadowy organization, i.e. the Jesuits, and its then purpose and pedigree in the political arena. Very, very little was known then about its formation or who was pulling its secret strings. It was simply on the periphery of interest to students of the occult or astrology and crime. I know how he feels because I remember when I first started this. But today, however, it's gone mainstream in a sense, hasn't it? More people know about it, he says, and now it must be the staple diet of all keen people who seeking to familiarize themselves and to learn more about the aims and ambition of this fallen world of Lucifer. I like the way he puts that. But the Illuminati, the Jesuit Vatican-led New World Order, as I put it, have spewed many fiendish frogs, many front groups, out of its own putrid mouth, hasn't it? These were known as the Center for Foreign Relations. This is what you hear on the internet. These are the real Illuminati. The Bilderberger Group, the Trilateral Commission, the United Nations, Opus Dei, the Knights Templars, the Knights of Malta, the Knights of St. Columbus, founded in 1919, etc., etc. Many, many more. Now, he says, the Brotherhood of the Cross, the Club of Rome, the mysticism as well as the Masons, the Round Table groups, all of these, and most in the pockets, he says, of the Jesuits. Yet, many people are not aware of it, even the people in those groups. He shows a beautiful picture here of Pope Paul VI with the Trilateral group. Pope Paul's in the middle, of course. But I suppose, he says, I should include, for inspection, the not-so-well-known B'nai B'rith, a Jewish organization founded in 1843 in New York. However, I ask, are they just a chummy meeting group of old boys dedicated to charitable causes for their community? Dr. Freud may have been an occasional guest, it seems, and maybe even Marx, Karl, not Groucho. Or is there an elite inner core of power seekers in its myth motivated by power and trying to somehow correct the mistakes of the past? Now, this reminds me, when you talk about B'nai B'rith, we'd done many shows in the past about the Shriners. Oh, they're an interesting organization with their fez hats, Muslim hats. Wow. Go back to some of that. Maybe we'll do another show on them. But I find them to be a real interesting, if you know what I mean, organization. Of course, he says, I have to naturally spotlight the CIA, appropriately also called the Catholic Intelligence Agency, or Catholic Intelligent Actions, as some forgotten comedian once called him in a mock horror movie. I also suggest that so many of the previous serving heads of these powerful intelligence agencies, all long forgotten, have arrived in Washington prepped and prepared from an elitist and privileged Jesuit-educated academic system. One can only speculate that the Jesuits may have invented the popular Facebook for their own intelligence, taking in Google and Yahoo along with that wide Roman road through the social media outlets, including tweets and postings, whatever have you. It's also worth a mention that before Barack Obama was elected as a Democratic senator, he had been a paid church employee in Chicago, worked closely with a former Jesuit priest, Gregory Galuzzo. It has also been said that the infamous Jesuit institution known as Georgetown University has for some reason become Obama's second home. I wonder why. And did not the parliamentarian Edmund Burke remark that, quote, the Jesuits are an infectious plague? Burke, of course, may be long gone, but the Black Pope, unfortunately, still reigns supreme from Rome in the cloistered shadows of the Vatican. I know, I used to walk by where they're at. They're at Via Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque in Rome. That's the Jesuit headquarters, if you're on a vacation there. Although you might not be going to Rome with this recent travel ban, I wonder how they're going to ban everybody to your home, right? Everybody's going to be banned to their home. Wow. So many other so-called sinister secret societies also exist today and usually found lurking in the shadows of suspicion. So mention should made a few, such as the Kabbalah. Many early Loyola followers were the Iberia and the Jewish in ancestry, were perhaps the crypto-Jews who influenced the Jesuit order's thinking at the time. I love bringing anything into this. The Church of Scientology is interesting because the functioning of the Delphian School today is now situated in Oregon near Sheridan and was a working seminary for Jesuit religious novices until its closure. The Scientologists later purchased it in 1976 for their own purposes. Wow, I did not know that, as Jenny Carson would say. Many of you are going, who the hell is Jenny Carson? Well, the Scientologists later purchased it in 1976. Maybe Captain Ron Hubbard had an admiration for the Jesuits as well. Maybe later studying their elusive educational methods to be implemented into Scientology timetable of the study tech. Do you remember that old worn-out Jesuit maxim, give me a child at 7 and I will give you the man? I think there is something in that we never shake off the old school regime of learning, or whoever imparted it upon us, especially from a Catholic background. We'll get into more of this, as I want to just make a couple comments here. Right. The Jesuits, folks, today are really embedded in so many different things that basically you'll never hear about them. And all I want you to understand is that what we try to do here is basically just give you a kind of a roadmap, an outline, so that you can take this further, because there's so much that comes in play here that in one lifetime it's going to be hard to get it all. But I want to leave you today with one message. Don't give up, because, you can easily be swayed to the other side. And doesn't it true when you start, for example, take the coronavirus, for example. You start looking at it, you start really questioning, Where does it go? What is really happening? Where is it? And all of a sudden, you turn on the tube and you hear their story and you go, well, maybe they're right. Listen to me. Do not believe anything they say until you can prove it. And once you start looking at it, you're going to find so many different things that are going to lead you in directions of maybe disproof, proof, but please, be a questioning individual. Don't take anything for granted anymore. And what I'm saying is, give these stories that you see all over the place. For example, one that I love is the flat earth. And you may not believe it. But then again, look at what NASA has done. And you know, wait a minute. I just got the call. Oh, no, he called at the last second. This is Nathan. Yes, he's here. Okay. Nathan, I can't talk to you right now. Greg, I just got back, and I'm sorry, but, you know, after taking a trip, the Earth is flat, Greg. I want to prove it to you. I sound a little crazy, but after three years and 6 months on that ship, my body is still shaking. But I will show you that. Nathan, now come on. Are you okay? Yes, Greg. Now, can you tell me a little? Yeah, I will tell you everything about my trip around the flat earth. I have videos, pictures, and most of all, my crew. Some of them are still in shock. 3 years, man. 3 years, 6 months. But we went around the entire ice wall. Okay, Nathan, I'm all out of time. Sorry. Thank you, Greg. I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, Nathan will be back tomorrow. Sorry. Wow, that's going to be a good show, so come back tomorrow. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the Jesuit connections. Okay, back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.